Give me some more volume here. So this Kartik, this sacred month of Kartik, it started on a Sunday, which means in the 30-day month, we get 5 Sundays. And so it's unusual. Doesn't always happen like that. I guess it happens once every 7 years, if I think about it. Happens once every 7 years. You get 5 Sundays instead of 4. Which is nice because we get to discuss the month of Kartik a little more with all of you. So let's start at the beginning. Within our tradition, there are 4 months of the year which are considered to be sacred. This would be roughly equivalent to Lent in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions, or Ramadan within Islam. It's quite common within a given calendar year that there will be some days or weeks or months that are set aside as being special in that tradition. And there's kind of two varieties of that. You have special days, sacred days, that may occur at any time, and they usually commemorate some miraculous occurrence or some miraculous event which took place for that tradition. And then sometimes those get grouped together and they become an extended period of time, and that, usually if it's like a month or several weeks, then normally what people do is they engage in austerities during that time. Which means they give some stuff up. Maybe they do extra of one thing, or they do less of something else. They give something up, or they add something. For example, I was raised in the Orthodox Church, and they celebrate Lent, which is the 40 days leading up to the crucifixion and resurrection. So there's a bunch of days, Ash Wednesday and Good Friday and Easter. So there's a bunch of days that are grouped together, and that becomes Lent. And then my priest would be vegetarian. So normally he ate meat, but during Lent, normally he ate meat and he also drank alcohol. He was Serbian, so he drank alcohol, he drank vodka and ate whatever. Nonsense. But during Lent, he was vegetarian. No dairy even. He wouldn't take dairy, wouldn't eat any meat, and didn't drink at all. So that's pretty standard. Or like in Ramadan, you're not allowed to eat from sunrise to sunset every day. Or drink water. They also do a fast from water, which is quite severe, especially if you're in a place like the Middle East or in India where it gets incredibly hot, especially during those months. To fast from water it's severe. In fact, the professional fighters who are observant Muslims, they can't take any fights during that time because they can't train or compete, because they can only work at about half speed, because they can't drink water all day, and it just breaks their regime. They can still do something, but it's a pittance compared to the normal kind of training they can do. So they'll have to wait. They can't take any fights, maybe a week before Ramadan, they're preparing for the fast, and then for several weeks afterwards, they have to start their camp after the Ramadan is finished, so maybe 2 months after Ramadan is finished. So when you look at those longer periods of time, those extended periods of time, they usually involve doing less work, more time in prayer, fasting from certain things, and undergoing austerities, voluntarily giving things up to make more time to focus on divinity. This is it's actually, even you find a little mini version of it in the Shabbat, in the Sabbath, that observant Jews from Friday night until Saturday night. They don't do anything, and they don't do any work. And that's, again, it's an austerity. You stop doing stuff. You slow down. You spend that time in prayer. So within Orthodox Hinduism, and also within our Vaishnava tradition, we have 4 months called Chaturmas, and they are sacred. And they correspond to the rainy season in India. The 4 months of the rainy season of Chaturmas take place starting in June or July in a lunar solar calendar, and the dates switch every year based on what's going on with the moon, and they start roughly around when the rainy season starts in India. The monsoon season starts in India. India traditionally, according to traditional taxonomies or traditional ways of categorizing things, they have 6 seasons as opposed to 4. And so one of those extra seasons is a rainy season. And if you go to like Costa Rica or someplace like that, they only have 2 seasons. They have a rainy season and a dry season. And so this rainy season phenomena, where there's, the rain is so substantial that it forms its own season. It's common. We don't have it, so we don't think about it. However, if you go, let's say, to the South or the Midwest, Texas, New Mexico, places like that, Missouri, it's quite common that during the middle of summer, it'll be insanely hot, and then around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a bunch of clouds will just roll in, seemingly out of nowhere. A ton of rain will dump. There'll be lightning and thunder in the sky, and then they'll be gone, like in an hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. The humidity goes down, and the heat goes down. And so it's a little mini version of a monsoon season. The difference would be that in a true monsoon season, you feel as if someone is pouring a bucket of water on your head when you leave the house, and you feel like that for weeks on end. It's almost incessant. Just huge quantities of rain. Unbelievable quantities of rain. Find the mother or the father. Deposit the child with them. I'm sorry? No. You hand it to the mom. People need to take care of their own kids. It's dangerous, actually. You're trustworthy, but they don't know that. And if their kid's wandering around uncared for, it's dangerous for the child. Mind your own children. Not because we don't like your children, but it's a public space. For liability purposes, be with your child at all times. So the monsoon season actually gets its own, the Sat Ritu, 6 seasons in India, and one of them is the monsoon season. And it's so heavy that it's almost impossible to do anything during the monsoon season. So traditionally, pious Orthodox Hindus will, wherever they are when the monsoon season starts, they stay in that place for 4 months. Amongst Orthodox Hindus, the priestly class, they'll go somewhere and they won't travel for 4 months. And then we're already vegetarian and sober, so that's a 24/7 thing for us. And so during Chaturmas, the austerities become quite extreme. Maybe eating once a day, maybe only eating some khichdi once a day. Other austerities like chanting extra japa. And so there's positive things you do and things you give up, negative things you avoid, and then positive extra things you do. And in India, no marriages occur during the Chaturmas. Sometimes people get married in the summertime or whatever. It's quite popular in the West. But in Orthodox Hindu society, there are no marriages that take place during Chaturmas. There's a moratorium on marriages. And so there's a big rush. Right before the Chaturmas starts, there's a ton of weddings. And then right after after the 4 months, usually like in November, December, there's a slew of weddings that happen during that time. But nobody gets married during the rainy season. So it's not a small thing. It's a big thing. It's a big deal. So within those 4 months, there is 1 month that's special. That month is called Kartik. That's the month we're in. Within that month, it normally has 4 Sundays. This one has 5 Sundays. And so we're excited about that. One of the extra things we do during the month of Kartik, in fact, the main thing we do, the most important thing we do, as listed in our text, like the Hari Bhakti Vilas, we sing a song every day, and we offer a lamp. And so we have a bunch of lamps that you'll get a chance to offer tonight after the program, after this portion of the program is concluded, and we do kirtan. We'll sing the song, ancient song, and then we'll all have an opportunity to offer lamps, because that's the main religious observance that takes place during the month of Kartik. Amidst all the other giving up of material things and additional personal spiritual practices, there's a kind of a standard template everybody does. They offer a lamp every day, and they sing a song. And so I always during Kartik, at least once a day, if not twice a day, I sing the Damodarastakam and offer a lamp, always, for 35 years now. It's important. It's important to us. It's not a small thing. It's maybe not a big thing. It's not up there with, let's say, not eating meat or chanting your japa every day, but it's not small either. It's not a mini thing that you could do or not do. Maybe up there with a codicy or something like that. Important, but not as important as our most core vows, but just a step below those. And by the way, that's an important thing to do. When you look at a tradition, there are going to be a number of things that make up that tradition. Things you do, things you don't do. You have to create a hierarchy within that. Because if you equally weight everything, if you equally weight all the items in your tradition, then let's say not eating meat, for example, is as important as following a codicy or not eating onions and garlic. And so we have some things that are smaller and then some things that are bigger, and it's critical that we make that hierarchy within our own lives so we never miss the really big stuff, and the small stuff we give an appropriate amount of weight to. So anyway, amongst observant Hindus, Vaishnavas, within our tradition and around our tradition as well, Kartik is celebrated by singing the Damodarastakam and also by offering a lamp. And the Damodarastakam is an ashtaka. It's 8 prayers which have been put together to teach something, to celebrate something, to acknowledge something. And so we've been going through the 8 prayers. And so we're now at the 5th of the 8 prayers. But I'm going to jump back to the 4th prayer, and because they're linked. So, idam te vapur nata gopala balam. O Lord, your form as a child. Idam te vapur. I'm sorry. Varam deva moksham na moksha vadingva. Varam deva moksham na moksha vadingva. O Deva, O Lord. Varam deva moksham na moksha vadingva. The blessing of liberation, or even the blessing of the highest conceivable liberation. Na cha anyam vrineham vareshat vara ishad apiha. I do not pray to you for anything in this world, including liberation, or even including something above liberation, the highest Moksha avadingva, even the highest liberation. I'm not praying you for that. Even though you are Vara Isha, you are the giver of benedictions, I'm not praying you for any of those benedictions. Rather, idam te vapurnata gopala balam. Rather, O Lord, your form as a child, sada me manasyavi rastam kimanyai. Let that form of yours as a child always be present in my mind. Kimanyai, what of anything else? What do I need of anything else? So this is a serious prayer. Jumping into it here is a little difficult because the previous verses set this verse up, but that is what it is. Hopefully you were here in previous weeks. If you weren't, we'll do our best to drag you along. But we're in an intermediate stage of this prayer. We worship Krishna as a child, which is subversive and exotic and unusual. Generally speaking, when you think about God, you think of God as a parent. You are the child, God is the parent. You are small, God is big. You are the receiver, God is the provider. In fact, if you pray for something to God, you are invoking a parental type relationship and taking the role of a child who's asking their parents for permission or for help or for resources. Even if you're talking to a judge or if you're talking to let's say a law enforcement officer trying to get out of a ticket, there's a certain way that you supplicate, and it has a paternalistic tone to it where you are treating them as your superior, your safeguard, your caregiver, someone who's in charge of you, someone who can tell you what to do, someone you have to comply with, and you are essentially begging them or asking them to have mercy on you. That's the kind of relationship a child has with their parents, especially below a certain age. Below a certain age, parents are, practically speaking, all-powerful, which is why when parents act childish in front of their own children when they're too young, it's so traumatizing, because the children don't have the ability to reason through the idea that their parents may be idiots with all sorts of personal issues, and that the whatever grievances their parents have with them may in fact have nothing to do with them. It may be because their dad had a bad day at work or their mom had some issue that had nothing to do with the child, but the child gets blamed. Children can't figure that out because parents seem omnipotent to children. That's why you run in to take shelter of them if you have a bad dream. That's why you have a separation anxiety when you're separated from them, because you understand that they have the capability of protecting you. And so this relationship between a child and their parents echoes and reverberates into spirituality, and rightly so. God is the ultimate father and mother of the universe. In fact, Krishna says as much in the Gita, Pitaham asya jagato mata. I'm the mother and the father of the universe. So it's unusual that in our iconography, we worship God as a child. In fact, this month is called, in our religious circles, called the month of Damodar, not the month of Kartik. Kartik is from Kritika, the constellations in the sky, but we call it the month of Damodar because we name all of our months after a form of the Lord. And so this is Damodar, from Dhamma. Dhamma means to bind. Krishna says, Dando Dhammaya Tamaham. Of means of suppressing lawlessness, I am the stick. This is in the Gita. Different ways of suppressing lawlessness. There's different things you can do in statescraft and diplomacy to deal with lawless elements. And the last way you deal with lawless elements is you use violence. But that's the one that's guaranteed. You may be able to talk people down from the ledge or negotiate with them or offer them something in kind or subvert them some other way. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, violence is the gold standard, which is why legal codes have punishments attached to them. Because without those punishments, it's nothing more than the guideline. But when there's a punishment attached, and the punishment, we should understand, is a threat of violence. If you don't pay some fine you get, let's say you get a fine for having a speeding ticket, and you just ignore it. You have a speeding ticket and you ignore it. Who's ever ignored a speeding ticket before? Raise your hand. No one in the room except for me and that guy with the beard? That's it? Two of us? Only ones ever ignored a speeding ticket? No one's ever ignored. Raise your hand if you've ever ignored a speeding ticket. We're in another state. Yeah, see this? We got a couple of honest guys. Somehow it's all men. The women haven't done it. And so you ignore a speeding ticket and they issue a warrant. That happens. Did you know that? That's what they do. That's what happens. You ignore a speeding ticket, at a certain point, they issue a warrant for your arrest. And then if the police pull you over again for, let's say, another traffic violation, and you have a warrant open because of an ignored speeding ticket, then they have an option. They can impound your car and arrest you, or they can let you off the hook and tell you, hey, deal with this right now. They have an option at that point. And so that's what happens. It's just something as simple as a speeding ticket. If you just ignore it, now let's say it's a parking ticket and you ignore it, a little different. They won't let you register your car. That's what they do. They'll force you to pay your parking ticket when you go to register your car the next year if you ignore it, and they'll inflate the fine by 2, 3, 4 times. If you run through a toll road and don't pay that, they'll blow it up to like 10 times what it was, and then they will stop you from registering your car when you register your car. They're linked up to the registration. It's not severe enough to warrant issuing a warrant for you, but it is severe enough in the way they force compliance is by not allowing you to register your car. If you don't register your car, you're driving an unregistered car, then that can lead to a warrant and your arrest. So there's a cascading effect. But the basic principle is that for there to be any kind of law, there has to be some kind of a punishment attached. And all legal systems are based on a tacit or an explicit threat of violence. Namely that we have an armed group of people, which is law enforcement, and they wander around in vehicles which are armored and designed to ram other cars. And they're bulked out, beefed out, and then our law enforcement personnel are armed with non-deadly and deadly means of suppressing lawlessness in the form of billy clubs, essentially a club to beat you with, and that's what it is, right? A billy club is a club designed to beat people with. And then they have stun guns, which is sort of a interim kind of in between, right? And then finally they have firearms, and usually in the car they'll have a shotgun, or sometimes something even more, like an assault rifle, depending on where you are. And so they have a variety of lethal and non-lethal weapons available to them, and they just drive around looking for people. I was driving home from our program last night, and I saw a car was pulled over, and the people were out and they were handcuffed. I don't know if it was drunk driving or reckless driving or what exactly they caught, but it was late at night, and there was 4 or 5 people that were in a car, and they were sitting on the side of the road, and they were handcuffed. And I'm assuming they were being arrested. And there was a few police cars around them. And we need this. We need this. Because if you just left it as a guideline that you shouldn't hurt people, the world would be chaos. There needs to be some form of punishment attached. The thing is, if you are that person who is only behaving because of a threat of violence, you're not really that good of a person. That means as soon as you can get away with something, you'll do it. And so, although Krishna says, I'm the father and mother of the universe, indicating a hegemony, a power differential, that Krishna has power over us. And although that's true, and although there's value in that, there's a core limitation in thinking about God in those terms. And that is that your relationship is forever fear-based. And you're like a rascal child just waiting for your parents to leave so you can steal cookies or do whatever children do. It's a fairly limited and immature relationship where you're only following the rules because God's a parent watching over you and you're in trouble. Superior to that is a relationship based on love. And for that reason, we worship Krishna as a child. Because we think, I want to love God and ask what I can do for Krishna, not what Krishna can do for me. When John F. Kennedy, the U.S. president who was assassinated in 1963, I believe, 63, 64, in 1961, when he gave his famous State of the Union address, he asked, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. If you're not from the U.S., maybe you don't know this presidential address, but if you are born and raised in the U.S., this is one of the most famous speeches ever given. It was at the height of the Cold War between the USSR and the United States, and John F. Kennedy was reaching across the Iron Curtain to the USSR and trying to establish some rapport. Do we not all breathe the same air, drink the same water, care for our young? He was trying to avert nuclear disaster, which was, a real fear. A real fear. And he was also giving a call to action for people in the U.S. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. The reason why that's such a popular piece of a speech is because it really speaks to our essence of wanting to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And so as you start to contemplate divinity and a relationship with God as being the purpose of life, as being the highest thing you can do with your time, as being the most valuable thing you can do with your life, as being your ultimate life's work, then you start to think about what kind of relationship that would, what that would look like, what kind of relationship that would be. And you've essentially got two choices. You can have a fear-based relationship where you're punished for non-compliance, similar to our relationship with law enforcement, or with our parents when we're very young. Or you can have a love-based relationship, which is based on just caring for someone and wanting to do right by them just because, for no particular reward, just because you care about them. And when no one's looking, it doesn't make a difference. You still do the right thing. And it's not about what's in it for me even. It's about how I can be of service and how I can help you. And there's a selflessness in it that's beautiful. That's beautiful enough that, when it winds up in great speeches, they become immortalized. And they become saved for posterity's sake. So, I don't want anything from you. Anything in this world. Api iha. Nothing in this world. But I don't even want a benediction of moksha, liberation, or moksha avadin, or the highest liberation. Navrinne. I don't ask for that. Varam, that benediction from you, O Deva, O Lord, even though you are Vara Isha. You are the Lord of giving benedictions. You are the ultimate benediction giver, but I don't want any benediction from you. What do I want? Idam te. I want your Vapu, your form as Gopala Balam. Your form as a child. Bala means a child. Gopala, as a protector of cows, as a cowherd boy, as a simple child. I want that form. Avirasta, I want it to be manasi, to be present, appear before my mind, sada, always. Kimanyai, what of anything else in this world? What else do I need in this world? I just want that. It's a very high aspiration. And that when it says, I want your form as a child, what he's saying is, I want a relationship based on love, where I'm giving, and I'm not looking at what's in it for me. And we celebrate, not only is it a form as a child, so you're giving but not asking, but there's an absolute subversion of the natural power differential between us and God, as envisioned by this verse. Because we're talking about Damodar. Damodar comes from two Sanskrit words. Dhamma. Dhamma means to control. Krishna says, Dando Dhammayatamaham, of means of suppressing lawlessness. I'm the stick. I'm the ultimate threat of punishment, which is what really gets people to do the right thing. And so Dhamma means to curb or suppress. And Udara. Udara means abdomen. And it's where you get the English word udder from. Udder comes from Udara. So Dhamma Udara, or Damodar. Damodar is that person whose belly is bound. Dhamma, bound. Udara, abdomen. The person whose belly is bound, they're called Damodar. And this refers to a famous pastime in Krishna Lila, where Krishna was tied up by his mother, the angel, who thought of herself as Krishna's mother. She thought Krishna was her child, and he was being naughty, and so she tied him up the way you might tether. Sometimes you see children on leashes nowadays. Certainly you see dogs on leashes. Children on leashes always seemed a little bit abusive to me. But, strangely enough, I remember being a child, and my parents left to go somewhere, and they left me with a babysitter. And when they came back, the babysitter had tied myself and my brother up. And my parents came back, and we were tied up. Like the babysitter got rope from the tool shed and tied us up. And my parents got back, and instead of, calling the police and having the babysitter arrested, they laughed. They laughed. They thought it was hilarious. I think they might have even taken pictures. There's probably a picture somewhere of me tied up, my brother tied up. I remember this. I wasn't so young. I was maybe 6, 7. I remember this event. And so, yeah, but I was raised in the 70s. That was in the 70s. And so it was a different time then. Probably it's still, if you go out like in Kansas somewhere, like in rural Kansas, they're probably still tying kids up for misbehaving. It's probably still going on somewhere in the heartland, in the flyover states. But yeah, so this is rural India, and Krishna's celebrated as being tied up by his mother because he's prem vashya. He's controlled by love. And so they're celebrating the idea that the unknowable, unseeable, impossible to envision, impossible to touch, supreme, source of all reality, is available for the price of love. If you love Krishna, if you love God, that's the one thing that an all-powerful being doesn't have. They don't have your love, because you have to give it. What do you get for the person who has everything? You give them yourself, your heart, your love. No one can. They can take your body. People can imprison you. They can torture you. But they can't take your heart. Your heart belongs to you, to freely give to whomsoever you choose. And so Krishna gives himself willingly to his devotee for the price of love. And if Krishna didn't do that, there'd be something wrong with him. He wouldn't be an all-good deity. If you think about it long enough, you'll realize that a deity who wasn't subservient to love, available by love, who was so remote and so aloof and so other, that deity wouldn't be all good. And so when we're looking at the Supreme Being, we're looking at someone who has the finest of all qualities, and one of those is the ability to reciprocate with love. The ability to be vulnerable to love. And so what the author is saying is, I want that form to be manifest to me. I want to be able to see that form. And I'm willing to pay the price. I'm willing to give up my desires for everything in this world. I'm showing you, I'm not going to take anything you offer me. I'm just going to wait patiently until you become visible to me. You're not going to subvert my determination. You're not going to offer me some kind of consolation prize, fame, fortune, material enjoyment. I'm going to forego those things to show you just how important you are to me. That's the prayer. That was last week's prayer. This week's prayer is even more intense, and it uses the same line. Idam te, this your. Idam te vapu, this your form. So the next line starts out, Idam te mukambojam. Idam te, same thing, this your. So he's continuing with the prayer he started in the last verse. You get it? They do this in Sanskrit. Idam te, this is this. Idam te, this is this. And it's showing you a connection that they're evolving what they're asking for. You say, I'm not asking you for this. I'm asking you for this. And I'm asking you for this. And I'm asking you for this. And you're connecting all the ideas. What you don't want, what you do want. Idam te mukha. What does mukh mean in Hindi? Mukh. Face. Idam te mukh amboj. Amboj. Amboja. Ambuja. Same thing. Ambuja, amboja. What's ambuja mean? It means lotus. What does ambuja literally mean? Ambuja, we normally think it means that concrete company in India that has their advertisements everywhere. But what does ambuja literally mean? Born out of water. That's right. Ambu means water, and ja means born. And so the reason why the concrete company is called ambuja is because you add water to the powder and it makes concrete. It's a very clever name. You never thought of this, right? That's why he named it like that. It's very clever. They're very smart. India is currently undergoing industrialization in the rural parts, and so concrete is a big deal. And so everywhere you go in India, you can buy concrete. It's not like here in the West, it's not quite like that. But in India, like every corner shop is selling bags of concrete because everyone's buying concrete, because everyone's building. And so even in the remote rural places, you'll see concrete. Still, you make bricks. You can still see there's some brick production going on. But brick isn't as sustainable as concrete. It doesn't last as long. So especially like in city environments, so the more you get, it's illegal now to construct with bricks in most of UP. They still do it, but it's mainly illegal because a little earthquake comes along and everybody dies. The rebar and concrete is way safer. So, idam te mukambojam, your lotus face. This your lotus face. Atyanta nilai. What does nil mean in Sanskrit? Like Nilkant? What does nil mean? Blue. That's right. Atyanta nilai. Your atyanta means like too much. Like ati means very much. Atyanta nilai. By your very dark. Kuntalai, by your very dark hair, locks of hair. Vrittang, encircled by your beautiful locks of very, very dark curling hair. Snigdha raktaischa, which is also glossy and reddish. Raktais means with red. Snigdha, glossy. Kuntala, your hair. Vrittang, it's covered by your hair. Your beautiful lotus face is covered by locks of curling hair, tinged with red. Maybe some sindoor is there in the hair. Or sometimes when things are so dark, they have a little bit of a hue to them also. And so what's being described now is not just, I'm in love with your form as a child. What's being said now, the actual face of God is being described by our author. The actual face of God is being described. And it's being approximated to being like lotuses, although technically Krishna's face is not lotus-like, because Krishna is the origin of everything, and therefore lotuses are Krishna-like. But because we are in this world, and we are trying to springboard to that world, we see the thing in front of us, the lotus, and we understand that that blossoming, beautiful lotus, that reminds us of Krishna. And so we then, untouched by water, untouched by mud. Another name for lotus is pankaj, born of the mud. And so it's clean, but it's born of the mud. It's dry, but it's born of the water. Ambuja, pankaj, it's born of mud, born of water, but yet it's dry and it's clean. We think of Krishna like that. Also, the lotus bud has a particular shape, almost like an almond shape. Krishna's eyes have that same shape. And so in this way, Krishna is oftentimes compared to the lotus, as many holy things in India and in Southeast Asia are compared to lotuses, the most beautiful flowers for that culture. I mean, lotuses are amazing. Actually, lotuses have an ability to repel water that's studied by people making waterproof garments, because the chemical structure of the lotus leaf is naturally waxy. And when people are making different like bulletproof and waterproof fabrics, they study the way that the fibers of the lotus mesh together, and they use that. I actually read an article on that. I'm not making that up. And so the lotus there's many beautiful things. The lotus itself is beautiful, but then it has these amazing, almost anti-material properties. It's in the water, but it's not wet. It's in the mud, but it's not dirty. If you put water on it, the water just rolls right off it. And so it reminds people of being in this world, but not of it, of being beyond this world, but visible. But the truth is, the lotus is Krishna-like, because Krishna is the origin. But interestingly, in Sanskrit, in Indic philosophy, you say sat asat, you say effect cause, not cause and effect. Because although the cause precedes the effect, you first experience the effect and then you reason your way back to the cause. Like we might say all men are mortal, that's the cause. Therefore, Ryan's going to die at some point. All men are mortal, therefore Ryan will die at some point. But how do I conclude this big, lofty idea that all men are mortal? Where do I get that from? I see a bunch of people die, and then I conclude, all people are going to eventually die. So although we might have cause and effect, the way it actually works for us is we see the effect, and then we reason our way back to the cause. So the first thing we experience is the effect, and then we infer back to the cause. And then when we do that enough times, we then start to talk about axioms or presuppositions, which we can then use to do other math. Pythagoras didn't invent the Pythagorean theorem. He measured a bunch of right-angled triangles and then was able to understand the nature of a triangle with the hypotenuse and the two small arms. He measured a bunch of triangles, equilateral triangles, and then he was able to figure it out. But he didn't start with a theorem. He developed a theorem as a result of measuring many different triangles and realizing something about the nature of shape, geometry. So although Krishna is the source of lotuses, we first experience lotuses and then we begin to meditate on Krishna. And therefore lotuses are Krishna-like, even though we say Krishna's face is lotus-like. One of our commentators 500 years ago wrote a commentary on this song, and he mentions precisely this point. This point I'm sharing with you is not something I came up with cleverly. Rather, 5 centuries ago, one of our principal commentators was commentating on this ancient text for us, and he mentions something very similar to this. So idam te, now I'm not just saying your form as a child, I want to love you purely. I'm not saying that. I'm actually envisioning your form. Mukambojam atyanta nilai vritam kuntalai snigda raktaischa. You have a beautiful lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, and it's glossy, red-tinged hair, like bumblebees flying around the flower. That's also explained by Sanatana Goswami, the person who commentated on this verse. He said that your hair is like bumblebees. You ever see bumblebees? They're black and they fly around the flower. And so Krishna's hair, beautiful locks of hair, look like so many bumblebees surrounding his face, because his face is like a beautiful blossoming lotus. And his hair is like bumblebees that are looking to get some of the nectar that's possessed by this lotus of Krishna's face. Beautiful picture, right? The poetry is designed to be an aid in your meditation, to help you begin to step out of this world into that world, to see something beyond this world. Gopya muhus chumbitam. Gopya muhus chumbitam. And it's kissed again and again by the gopi. It's kissed again and again by the gopi. And the gopi here is either Yashoda, Krishna's mother, who's kissing his face, or the gopi here referred to is Srimati Radharani, who's also kissing Krishna's face. And depending on your relationship with Krishna, one of those two will be most attractive to you to meditate on. Either Yashoda Mai or Srimati Radharani. Both can be referred to by Gopya, as also explained by Sanatan, our commentator. And muhus, again and again. Chumb, kissing. Chumbitam, kissed again and again by the gopi. Gopya means by the gopi. Rakta adarang. Rakta adarang. And your lips are bimba rakta adarang. Your lips are red like the bimba fruit. Krishna has beautiful red lips, and they're compared to the bimba fruit. The bimba fruit is a gourd, an ivy gourd, kind of like Karela, that grows in India and is made into a sabji. But it has a very beautiful reddish color to it. A very beautiful reddish color. And just like an eggplant also has, like an eggplant kind of like the skin is sort of glossy and full, and the eggplant might almost look like lips. So the bimba also has that. It's like a very, very small eggplant, but it's very red, and it almost looks like lips. So not only is it red like the color bimba, but it's also full like the bimba. Bimba rakta adaram. And so your lips, adaram, are rakta, red, like bimba fruits, and full like the bimba fruit also. Full lips are considered to be very attractive, and so the bimba fruit is like a. If you look at it, I think you looked it up, right? Yeah. So then it looks very full, like a lip, right? Like a very full lip. So that's the imagery is there. Again, an approximation. Manasi adarang me manasi avirastam alam laksha labhai. It's very similar to the last verse again. He says, me manasi avirastam. This last verse said the same thing. It said, idam teva purnata gopalabalam. Sada, always, me, my, manasa, my mind, avirastam, let it be manifested. Kim, anyay, what of anything else? What value is there in anything else? This is almost the same structure. It says, me manasa avirastam alam laksha labhai. That let it be manifest to my mind. Let it be manifest to my mind. And our commentator Sanatan does something really beautiful. He says, let it be manifest to my mind, muhus, again and again, because Krishna mentions the word muhus. Or it says, no, you're being kissed by the gopi again and again, but even just one time let it be manifest to me. It's another reading you could do. Or you can drag the sada from the last verse, which means always, and so now you're saying, and let it always be manifested in my mind, because you're using the same sentence structure, and therefore what occurred previously can then be imported logically and reasonably into this verse as well. It's a little technical. I don't think any of you followed that, but it's good. It's really good poetry. It's really good poetry. And the commentary on the poetry is exquisite. Really shines a light on it. Alam, enough. Alam means enough. Enough. Laksha labhai. Enough of lakhs. What's a lakh? 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 1 crore. What's a lakh? 100,000. It's a unit measurement in India. In India, they measure 1 lakh rupee, 2 lakh rupee, and then 100 lakhs becomes a crore. It's a different way of measuring. So instead of thousands and 10,000 and 100,000, they have lakhs, which is roughly equivalent to $1,600, a lakh of rupees, and then 100 lakhs of rupees is $160,000 is a crore, maybe a little less. Maybe a little less these days. The rupee, I think, is at 82 right now. So, alam, laksha. Laksha is where the word lakh comes from. Laksha labhai. Lab means gains, things you get. Lab means to gain, as a verbal root. Labhai, enough with these hundreds and thousands of things you can get in the world. I don't need any of it. Alam laksha labhai. Enough with all these things you get in the world. I don't need any of it. I just want to one time see that beautiful face encircled by those locks of beautiful hair, kissed repeatedly by the gopi, with these beautiful lips, looking like a lotus flower, surrounded by bumblebees. If I can just see that one time, enough. Millions, hundreds of thousands of benedictions you could offer me, I wouldn't take a single one of them. Then, inspired by his meditation, Namo Deva Damodar Ananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukkha Jalabdi Magnam. And he begins chanting Krishna's names. Namo, obeisances to you. Namo Deva, Lord. Damodar, the one who's bound around the belly. Ananta, the unlimited one. Vishnu, the all-pervading one. Prasida, please. Please be merciful to me. Prasad, it's the same word. Prasidas as a verb. Please be merciful to me. Please be kind to me. Prabho, O Prabhu, O Lord. Dukkha Jalabdi Magnam. I'm drowning in an ocean of sadness, not being able to see you. Dukkha Jalabdi Magnam. I am drowning in an ocean of sorrow. Please be merciful to me and show yourself to me. Jalabdi Magnam. Kripa Dristi Vrishya. Kripa Dristi Vrishya. Your glance, the rain of the glance of your mercy. With the rain of the glance of your mercy. I'm drying up here in the desert. And I'm begging you that the rain of the glance of your mercy rains on me, revives me. I'm drowning in an ocean of sorrow, and I'm drying up in a desert of separation. And I'm asking you to give me your glance, see me, and revitalize me. He's using multiple contradictory metaphors. It's beautiful in poetry. Kripa drishti vrishchati dinam vrisha ati dinam. Ati dina, I'm so fallen. Bata, alas, I'm so fallen. Anugrihita, anugrihanesha. O Lord, O Isha, anugraha, anugrita. Be merciful to me. Favor me. Think about me. Help me. Forgive me. Bless me. Mam agyam. I'm ignorant. Please bless me. I'm ignorant. Ed yakshi drishya. Please let yourself be seen by me. Please allow me to see you. And so, inspired by this meditation, the poet, there's no fear here. He's not afraid. He's speaking of himself as being very fallen and very lowly to solicit Krishna's mercy. But there's no fear. There's no self-absorption. I'm going to go to hell, or some terrible thing's going to happen to me, or I'm afraid that my sins are going to catch up with me, or my karma's going to catch up with me. There's no fear here. His statements of his fallen condition are simply being invoked to elicit mercy and to convince the Lord to appear before him. Akshidrishya, please be seen by my eyes. Allow yourself to be seen by my eyes. So this is timeless poetry, beautiful poetry, profound poetry that's pregnant with deep meaning. Our tradition has encoded within this poetry so much of our value system, so much of our aspirations, and the author is putting everything on the table. He's giving you a glimpse into his personal life, into his consciousness, into his aspirations, into what he aspires for, what he's giving up and what he wants. And he's laser sharp in his focus. And this is some of the most beautiful religious poetry I've ever read in my life. I've been reading this poetry for 35 years. I learned this as a young man at the age of 17. I'm 51 now, so for 34 years I've been reciting this poetry. I've been reading it. I've studied it so many times, hundreds of times. It's some of the most beautiful poetry I've ever read. And I read poetry. It's not that I don't read poetry. I read poetry. This is some of the most beautiful poetry I've ever read. And one of the beautiful things about it is it's so systematic. It takes you on a journey, and the author just lays it all out. Okay. So we'll be singing this momentarily, but because it's Kartik, we want to give you guys a glimpse into some of the highlights of our tradition, some of the deep, ecstatic utterances of our lineage over the millennia and over the centuries. It's quite amazing. We have this poetry is thousands of years old, and then the commentary is 500 years old. And so you're getting both things which are centuries old and things which are thousands of years old. And we've been doing this for a long time, generation upon generation upon generation of our predecessors. Sang these prayers, memorized them, explored them, meditated on them, used them as a springboard for their own meditation. And then we honor them by looking at their writings carefully and also following their footsteps and doing the ritual. So we'll do our regular program. Our arti will be quick arti, and then we'll sing the Damodarastakam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.